Hello chess fans, in today's video I'm going to be doing an entire opening repertoire for beginners. It's going to be easy and mainly not based on theory. I'm going to do this because I got this comment recently about how should you study openings as a beginner. And I believe simply you shouldn't really study openings, but I know a lot of beginners do want to study openings, and so I'm going to give you the easiest possible things you can play to get playable positions and get out of the opening with natural play. So first off, we're going to look at what I'm going to recommend for the majority of this repertoire, which is the move e4. I simply believe this is the most natural way to play as both white and black. And as you can see, there's the evaluation bar on the side of the board, which you can see right here, which gives the evaluations, which proves that this repertoire, it's still like relatively equal. You're not losing anything as white, you're still going to get a good position. So first, let's look at e4, e5. So against this, I recommend playing knight f3, the most natural move. And if they go knight f6, I simply recommend you take this, and after they play d6, you go back, they take here, and you play d4, and we simply get a natural position. This is the main line of the Petrov. Granted, you don't even need to know that. So let's say they play knight c6. Here we're going to play the most natural move, which is to put the bishop on the best diagonal it can be on. Bishop c4, we're simply controlling the square in the center, a natural move. Bishop c5, your opponent will continue with something like this, or they might continue with knight f6. Doesn't matter, we're going to play this move. And after knight c6, we're going to play knight c3. This move doesn't look for a big advantage, keep in mind, but it looks for an advantage that is clear and easy to prove. Not to mention that this move is really easy to play. If I just develop my pieces to the most natural squares, this is going to happen in 90% of my games. Notice we played d3 first, because what would happen if we played knight c3 first? I'm sure everyone knows knight takes c4, we get hit by the center fork trick. So here we would play, instead of knight c3, we would play d3. That's the only thing to know. And here, just notice, the plan we're going to go for is to go for this pin right here, and then we're going to follow it up with a knight and double their pawns. So after bishop g5, a common mistake actually we see at beginner level, again, this is a natural move, is castles. And seemingly, this move is actually already a mistake, because after knight d5, white is getting a huge advantage with the pin, as you can see in the arrows. Most of your opponents will play h6, but then you can take, play the knight to d5 with tempo. Some of your opponents might blunder this fork. And after queen d8, c3, we want to play d4, and white has a comfortable game with a lot more space and natural play from here. So that's my recommendation against e4, e5. Keep in mind, you don't need to know that much theory, you just need to know, put your pieces on the general squares and look forward to this pin with bishop g5. And often we put our other knight here. So next, let's look at e4, c5, the Sicilian. So I actually already have a video, which I think I will put in the information up here somewhere, but I will go over the basic setup. So basically what we're going to do is look for this setup right here. And yeah, you might say, what does this look like? This is just a lot of arrows. Well, I'll show you. I'll just go through some moves. We're going to put our knight on c3 first. Then we're going to give this g3. And we have to prevent this d5 move. That's very common. You don't need to know the specifics order. And then we're going to play this d3 move, develop our knight here, bishop e7, castle, and play f4, castles, and bishop e3. And once we've developed all our pieces like this to prevent d5, we're going to look forward to the plans, as I said, h3, g4, attack the king, or maybe play e5 in some positions, f5 in some positions. Keep in mind, from here, you need to have understanding, and the more you play this, the more you'll understand. If you want to know more about this, check my other video in the cards. Next, let's look at the French. The thing about the French is that there's a lot of complicated lines of, let's say, knight c3, knight d2, e5. These are all very complicated lines. But to keep it as most simple as possible, we're going to play this move. And after here, how can white not be better? White simply has the extra first move. Here we're going to develop like this. And, well, some of your opponents might go for this. If they continue to develop, well, we just have an easy position here for white. And as you can see, this is the best that they can get. Their pawns are a little bit overextended. Keep in mind that most of your opponents here are probably just going to play this, and then you're just going to be up a tempo. This is an easy position to play without knowing much theory. All you have to remember is that you have to take this pawn when you see it. Next for the Caro-Kann. So now this is a little bit more tricky, so keep in mind you have to know some stuff here. So we're going to play d4, and they're going to play d5, attacking our pawn. And here we're simply going to defend our pawn like this. And after they take, which is the most common line, if they play e6, we can play like knight f3 and continue developing. And yeah, after they take, the main line is to go here, and we go knight g3, they move their bishop back, we develop our knight, they develop their knight, and we play this bishop d3 move. And here we just simply have a little bit more space as white. We can castle, develop our bishop, and black has a little bit less space. And they could also play this move, in which case, all we have to do is just develop our pieces like normal, take this knight when it comes to f6, and if they go here, we'll just take the knight, they take back, and then we can develop like normal. Alright, now let's look at the e4 sidelines. So first, let's look at the Scandinavian. A lot of you will face this and are wondering what to do. Well, actually, I'm not going to give a big recommendation here, because after takes here, I feel like the play kind of flows natural, no matter what defense they go to. I feel like it's very easy for white to just simply develop with knight c3, bishop c4, and other things like this. Keep in mind, this is not so much focused on theory, because if you're a really strong player, this repertoire might not be as good, but if you're a lower rated player who is just getting into opening theory, I feel like this is a very good repertoire for you. Next, look at the Caro-Kann. All you have to do is go here, and the second you see the d6 pawn, just take it, and after they take back either way, just develop like normal. The bishop comes here, we castle our king, then we develop our bishop out this way, and develop our knight. These are all common plans. This might not be the exact setup, but from here we develop, we simply have more space, and this is very uncommon. Your opponent might not expect this. Let's say they play the perk. What I recommend is that we just put our pieces in the center, the most natural thing, and as you can see from the arrows, we're going to continue like that, and then we're going to castle essentially the same, like a very easy position. G6 is essentially the same as, like, we just transposed to the exact same thing. Now B6, a lot of people are going to get tricked by this move, because this is a very tricky move, and often black players play this to get white off their guard a little bit. I feel like other moves aren't really that critical, so this is the last move I'm going to go through. So we obviously take the center, they develop here, and we don't really want to play knight c3 because then they play e6 and they pin us, right? So we don't want that, so we play bishop d3, they play e6, we play knight f3, developing, they play c5, let's say. If they play the knight here, we can kick it away. c5, we defend the pawn with our pawn because we want to capture back towards the center. Knight f6, and here we just castle our king from here, and we have a nice spatial advantage. The only trick really they can have here is after something like knight c3, we often get tricked with this e6 move, which allows bishop b4, and then they can take this pawn, and they're getting a lot of pressure on the center. Alright, now let's look at the black repertoire. So I'm going to be looking at these 4 moves as you can see on the screen. Any other move other than these 4 is just going to not allow white, like, it's going to allow black an advantage because black is going to be able to control the center, and you can basically just play white at that point. So first, let's look at e4, what I've already recommended. I recommend that you play e5, knight f3, let's say they continue with this. You go for this. The Ruy Lopez is also very common, but keep in mind, all we're going to go for is this, d3 and bishop c5. Again, this is very, very natural for black. You're just going to continue developing. Notice that if they take here, this is not a mistake yet, but if they grab this pawn, obviously, I'm sure most of you can see the tactic here, common tactic to remember, especially like, let's say you go a6, a very similar tactic. They can't take this because we have the queen d4 fork. Important to remember if you play black. Again, in this position, it's very similar because we also threaten mate. All right. So next, knight c6, bishop c4, and we're going to go look forward to the same thing as we did with the white pieces. We're going to go with this bishop g4 move, and we're going to go for knight d4. Now keep in mind, there are a lot of variations where they play c3 and things like that. In that case, we're just going to castle, we're going to play d6, and we're just going to develop our pieces. Just keep in mind, e5 is always very flexible. Also, gambits. A lot of people are afraid of these gambits. What I recommend against most of these gambits is, all you have to remember is this. Let's say they play this, takes, and go here. All you have to remember is that we go our knight here, and the second they ever play this move, attacking our knight, we have to counter-attack their bishop and play this d5 move, exclam move, and after bishop b5, we get a position, we move our knight. If they take here, we take here, and we simply control the entire center. So all you have to remember about the gambits is that often you have to sack back the pawn to get a playable position, and don't be greedy for material, just get a playable position, develop your pieces like normal, make sure to get as much development as possible. So now d4. So d4. A lot of people are wondering, what's the simplest way to play against d4? I simply believe it's d5. What you will see at most in the intermediate level is this bishop f4 move. And I feel like this bishop f4 move is kind of not really venomous at all because we can just copy them like this, and we continue with this setup as I've shown you in the arrows that you can just continue with, and it's really just a nice position for black, and it's pretty equal. It's very natural to play. It's not like white's going to kill you out of this position. So yeah, this is a pretty easy thing to respond to. And next, we have c4, which is considered to be the critical test. But the easiest thing to do against this is to simply just take it, and after they play e3, they can play any other move. They can play knight f3, they can play knight c3, they can play e4. All of these, we're going to do the exact same thing. After e3, we're going to play this... Okay, first I'm going to go over a blunder we can make. b5 is a common blunder, because after a4, we play c6, they take, queen f3, we're actually losing the rook. So this is a common blunder in case any of you didn't know that. So after takes here and e3, let's say, what I'm going to be recommending is this c5 move. And this move makes it really easy for black to play. After takes, we get a position where white has the isolated pawn, and all we're going to do is just develop our pieces like this. When the knight comes to f3, we're going to pin it. We're going to go e3 and we're going to develop our final piece, and black has a slight advantage because of the isolated pawn. So this is a very easy way to play. And notice we're going to do this no matter what he plays. If he plays e4, we're going to do the exact same thing. And then after he takes here or whatever, we're gonna takes here or whatever, we're just going to take this. He could also go d5 here, but we don't need to get into the actual intricacies of the position. Another thing I recommend you play is this e5 move, because if they take, we simply trade queens. Keep in mind that's the same for c5, but the only thing about recommending this e5 move, it works against knight c3, e4, and e3, but it doesn't work against knight f3 because the e5 now is covered by the knight. So that's why I can't recommend it, and that's why I recommend c5. And yeah, so c5 is also a very good move. Okay, so now let's look at c5 and knight f3. Against knight f3 first, we are going to play knight f6. And why are we going to do that? Because on d5, some of your opponents will play this and you'll go back into the position you're used to. But some of your opponents will just trick you into playing a d5 opening, which we don't really want to play because we play e4, right? So we're going to play knight f6, c4, c5. We're just going to copy white from here. It's not going to be that hard. Whatever they do, we're just going to copy them for a while. Like if they go here, we go here, and we copy for a while, and we should get a playable position. Let's look at c4. And you might think, doesn't this look familiar to the Sicilian, the e4, c5? And you're exactly right. We are just going to do the exact same setup I recommended to you in e5, which is e5, knight c3, knight c6, g3, g6. This same setup, we're following our pieces to the exact same place. And as you can see, this is basically the same position. We're going to look for the exact same plans, just that white is here up a tempo and slightly better, as opposed to the other thing where it's kind of equal, because white had the first move there. So yeah, this is the exact same setup I recommended this as the white pieces, so this cuts down has a lot of theory you have to know. So if you have any questions, or if you have any recommendations for further videos that you would want me to make, please remember to let me know in the comments, and I will make any video you guys want. As you can see, Cubes here asked for a video, and I made an entire theory video for him. And with that all said, you also should maybe post a game down where you try this repertoire out, or let me know anything you have problems with this repertoire where maybe you have to learn some theory. I tried to make this as easy as possible for anyone to learn an opening, and I hope you guys can try this in your own games. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.